Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CHT Q&A. I am your host, Melody Molinaro, Director of Marketing at CHT. If you aren't familiar with us, CHT was created by applicants for applicants, and we have streamlined and automated the entire application process with easy-to-use software. Today, this webinar is going to be around 1 hour, and we're going to focus mainly on a segment we call Breaking Barriers. Each episode, we focus this segment on some part of the industry that needs to be broken down into much easier, smaller, and easy to digest pieces. Our guests are industry insiders and experts, and they will clear away the noise around the subject and help you understand just what you need to know and how it applies to you. If you have any questions during any section of the webinar, you can ask it by clicking on the questions icon, and you can find that at the bottom, in the bottom right corner, and we will answer your questions live as long as we have time. If we don't have time to get to it in the middle of the webinar, there's another section at the end of the webinar where we're going to go back and answer any questions that weren't previously answered. We're going to close with a quick but potent industry tip and a mindset tool to help you gain the confidence you need to join the industry and meet with success. So remember, if you have any questions during the webinar, you can just simply click on the question icon. And if we can't get to it in the middle of that section, which we will try, but if we can't, and there's too many, then we're going to open up the webinar at the end and you can ask it again and we will try to get to you then. Today, we are joined by our resident do-it-yourselfer, Jordan Smith, who is the COO of CHT and a cannabis industry expert, and Max Thompson, who is the COO of Blue Violets, a woman and minority-owned cannabis dispensary applicant in New Jersey. Welcome to you guys both.
Hi, glad to be here.
Hi, guys. So before we jump right into the news and the Breaking Barriers segment, let's go and get to know our guests a little bit better, starting with you, Jordan. Jordan worked for a company in Colorado that brought you on as the regional director to open up one of the first medical dispensaries in New Jersey back in 2011. And from what I hear, you're a bit of a celebrity in the medical marijuana industry. So tell us a little bit about your journey. Oh, I can't hear you. I think you got to turn off I think you're muted. There we go.
Oh, yes. Geez, thank you. Yes, my background dates back to 2008 in Durango, Colorado, as we navigated the beginnings of the first medical marijuana market. I never intended on being in cannabis, but took on as a budtender position in college, and that expanded into cultivation positions, manufacturing, extraction roles. And as I learned more, my passion for the industry just exploded. And since then, I have operated in the adult use markets and have owned and operated large operations in several states. The natural progression of all of that experience and hands-on knowledge was the ability to help some people get into the industry, which is where I found myself with CHT. Consulted for a couple of years here and then partnered with them recently to help accelerate applicants on a whole new level using software. My life has been cannabis for 13 years, and I just love supporting its progression.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And we are so lucky to have you here at CHT. We can't wait to share you with people and unleash some of your knowledge to help them through their processes. And then we have Max Thompson, and you are also a little bit of, I think, a Reddit celebrity because you've built quite a following and a name for yourself, and you've done this. Tell us a little bit about your journey with Blue Violets, and why do people know who you are now?
Yeah.
Sure.
So thanks so much for the introduction, having me on. So my wife and I have decided to go for a retail dispensary license here in New Jersey. And this was a culmination of a lot of things, but mostly just good timing and passion. So my background is I'm a regulatory attorney. And because of that background in the financial services space, I've actually been able to really track and understand the laws that have come out in Jersey and the regulations. And having a vested interest myself in trying to build a business here and obtain one of those licenses, I've really gotten to get into the weeds, into the details, no pun intended. And I spent a lot of time just going on Reddit and posting about our process and what I see in the industry, mostly because I'm just looking for people to talk to, and starting having done that over now almost 2 years. A lot of people have reached out to me on the platform asking for help or asking for insight, and hearing that CHT is doing these webinars, I knew I wanted to participate to help kind of spread more of this knowledge to others who are interested.
And yes, because you're an attorney, I mean, that must be incredibly helpful for you on your through your process.
Without a doubt. And it's not even just that I'm a lawyer. Like, I am a regulatory lawyer, and I help companies in the financial services space get licenses just like this process. So even though it's a different industry and there are a lot of differences, there are still a lot of similarities, and that's why I've been able to kind of do a lot of this on my own.
That's awesome, and that's why you've built up this sort of underground fame, we will say, and so your personal experience becomes so incredibly important as others start to go through this process, as New Jersey is opening up their applications in March 15th.
March 15th, that's right.
March 15th, big day, and you're already 90% through.
We're very close. That's right. In fact, I think we're going to be submitting our local application this week, so things are moving very quickly.
Great. Well, we can't wait to get you guys talking about some of these topics and able to help some people start to understand this huge industry a little bit easier. We're going to go on. We're going to open up with some news, cannabis business news. So this last week, New York Governor Kathy Hochul announced during her January 5th State of the State address that officials are going to create a $200 million fund to support social equity cannabis businesses. $200 million fund to support social equity cannabis businesses. What does this mean for social equity applicants? What is a social equity applicant? And why should we care about this? Let's go with you, Max.
Sure. So at least in New Jersey, and I think New York, it's pretty similar. A social equity applicant is going to be someone who resides in a low-income area or has a criminal past related to cannabis, or maybe even a family member who has a criminal past related to cannabis. Of course, the point of this, right, is to really attack the damage from the war on drugs. So we identify who these people are and then give them additional points and additional support in the application process. And this is exactly what this fund intends to do. I think it's great. It's really a standout from what other states have tried to do with social equity. Even here in New Jersey, there is no fund. There's been a lot of talk about getting funds into the hands of social equity applicants, but not a lot of action. So to hear Governor Hochul come out and say, yeah, $200 million to get into the hands of applicants to help them pay for legal fees, pay for advisors, a number of professional services and assistance that they can need in this process, it's tremendous. And I think it'll go a long way in actually achieving that goal of getting social equity businesses.
So how does this translate from, she says it, this is happening, and to people actually being able to access it? Or, what is the plan going forward? Obviously, she hasn't come out with a plan, but have other states done anything similar? Is there some sort of precedent here that we can look to?
Maybe Jordan can weigh in.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see. So New York is really, I think, setting a precedence as far as the way they are structuring their social equity program. It's leading in the effectiveness of that kind of program. They're funding people in a sense that will get them to apply. I feel like one of the barriers for social equity candidates to even enter the industry is that it's expensive to even apply, and then you're not guaranteed a license, right? So the state of New York is opening that door so that they'll get people in and through the gates and into the industry.
So they're actually going to be using some of these funds for accelerators and incubator programs, correct?
Yes. So to compare that to another program like in Illinois, they have a social equity program. You have to apply, meet the criteria, be approved for your business license. And then on the back end, you are qualified if you hit that social equity status as an applicant, that you automatically are getting part of a state-funded loan to start your business. So those two barriers, are broken in two different ways, right? So you still have to pay to apply, which can be kind of expensive process, but at least, as a social equity applicant, if you do get approved, you've got funding from the state to get you up and going, which is super beneficial.
So she's just announced that the money is being set aside. We don't know exactly how to access it yet. We don't know what that's going to look like, but I can guarantee you that CHT is going to keep on top of that, and we will be posting and blasting out on all social media channels when there's any updates on that. Looks like we have a question from Justin Pinto. It says the state laws are great. Yes, they are. But what about the risks associated with the federal regulations that conflict with the state laws? Ooh, this might be one for you, Max.
Yeah. No, this is something that's on my mind all the time, right? As an attorney, like I'm risk averse naturally. And so getting into this industry, this risk is just constant. It's ever present. It is federally illegal, right? And that makes it difficult to do things like properly bank your funds and your revenue and properly file your taxes. The risks are also very complicated. And I think that's one thing that, we talk about, yes, it's illegal federally, but what does that actually mean? Because dealing with these issues, it's tough. Someone who is really unfamiliar with the financial services space or, paying taxes for a corporation will probably need a lot of professional help, to get the right answers they need and protect themselves. So again, the equity fund from New York can really go a long way in helping something like that. But how do we address that? I mean, it's something I think we all have to live with until hopefully one day, right? Cannabis is descheduled or legalized at the federal level. When is that going to happen? God, I hope this year, but I think I have high hopes.
Yes. Hopefully very soon for everyone, because there's so much money, time, and energy being put into these businesses, and there's so many people's lives that are depending on it now, and it's bringing so much money into the economy. So if you look at the trends, it seems pretty clear that as one state goes down, two more are about ready to topple over. Eventually, hopefully, the federal government will catch up to what the people actually want. But that was a great question, Justin. Thank you. All right. So if there's nothing more here, then we're gonna move on to discuss our breaking barriers section. And in this section today, we are going to talk about the CRC meeting that happened on last Friday. And if you don't know anything about the CRC, it is the Cannabis Regulatory Commission, which sounds like super amount of fun for everyone, right? Who wants to go to the CRC Cannabis Regulatory Commission meeting? Just about as much as I want to go to a PTA meeting. But let's go ahead and dig into it. All webinars preceding a CRC meeting will include highlights from it. So anytime there is a CRC meeting in New Jersey, and we're focusing on New Jersey right now because of March 15th opening date for licensure, we're going to do a webinar, and we're going to break it down into understandable pieces, and we're going to talk about the key takeaways and what they would mean for you and your business. I think some of our next webinars will have other topics that we'll break down for this section, including unlocking terpenes, which has gotten a lot of excitement from both Max and Jordan. You guys are really excited about terpenes, and some industry guidance such as metric implementation in New Jersey. But let's go ahead and talk about the CRC Regulatory Commission. Maybe not as much fun as terpenes, but we're going to go ahead for it. So the CRC, these are the rule makers and the regulators of the cannabis industry in New Jersey. And the commission holds these monthly meetings, and sometimes they're twice a month. Like this month, there's going to be another one on, is it the 27th? It's I'm not quite sure on that.
27th, I think. Yeah, I think it is.
Yes, we'll get that for you. Yeah, it's on the 27th. And they do updates on the cannabis industry, and there's a whole bunch of topics on the agenda. And let's go ahead and see what last week's meeting was about. You can feel free to ask questions as we go along, or if you did watch the CRC meeting and you had a question already, feel free to ask it here. We'll answer them as we go along. And if there is a question outside the specified topic, we'll address those at the end again. Jordan and Max, you guys were both able to attend the meeting and bring us key takeaways, which is great. So now these meetings have so many items on their agendas, and we're going to discuss the key elements of the meeting. What changed, what's important, what's relevant to anyone in New Jersey getting ready to apply for a dispensary license on March 15th. For this CRC meeting, we will highlight the Executive Director's Report, the 2018 RFA Final Agency Decision, and the project approval for a statewide seed-to-sale tracking system. So, Jordan, what do you think were the key takeaways from the Executive Report on Friday?
Well, while most people think these are boring, I super enjoy sitting there listening to the mundane talk about regulatory discussions in the industry in general. I love an executive's report, especially at the beginning of the year. And to ice the cake, it was right after an application release. So they're typically really insightful quarterly at the beginning of the year. And then if there's been an event like an application release. It's really telling of, where the industry stands and what's going on in the next year. One thing I noticed, and we are really lucky to have this with the New Jersey Commission, is that they're extremely data-driven. They haven't reposted the meeting. Sorry, Max, I misquoted you on that. But so I couldn't pull out any of the hard data that they brought, but we'll give you a good summary of, in general, what they discussed. But one thing that they did bring up I thought was interesting and really brought me excitement about the data-driven commission was that they reported on the alternative treatment centers and medical dispensaries in the last year. They basically analyzed data of the industry. They listened to public comments. They heard that there isn't enough. They're not available, and that it was really hard to get your card. So what the commission promised to do was set goals of increasing patient registration and making it more available. So they were successful in that, and they reported on the increase in registrations from 1,000 to 3,000 consistently a month. And also they went from 4 operating dispensaries to 12, I believe is what they landed on. And so people aren't having to drive 4 hours and then wait for an hour. They definitely improved the availability of product. So that was really cool for me. Also just learning to get into the New Jersey market, that now we're going to be using that kind of information in the adult use sector of this.
Yeah.
So
No,
Go ahead, Max.
No, absolutely. Just couldn't agree more with Jordan. It's exciting to see the data come out and actually get a sense, right, with real facts, real information, to know what's going on. Especially since, look, personally, I think the commission has been a little opaque throughout the process, and probably for good reason. But there hasn't been a lot of transparency to tell everyone like what's happening day to day, what's getting prioritized. So to get the data and to see what's happening live is really exciting. And when it came to the adult use market in the meeting, right, they did mention 1,500 profiles have been made on the application portal, 300 complete applications received so far, 89% of which were conditional, which is really interesting to me. So it's good to get that insight, and I definitely have some thoughts on what that might mean for the industry.
Yeah, what do you think that means for the industry? More medical marijuana, more access, more people with medical cards. Is this a good thing for people applying for, to have recreational use or not?
It's interesting to watch what's happening to the medical market, especially since legalization happened. We had an explosion of requests for cards over the last few years. And then there's been like a kind of this wave, mostly because I think the gray market has become a little abundant again. People are feeling a little more safe, a little more confident there. Prices are cheaper. And so hearing that it's still kind of trending upwards, though, it doesn't necessarily surprise me. The medical market's pretty open. It's easy to get a card. And it just kind of speaks to what we really need, which is more product in the state. And I think that'll come over time, especially with the adult use market coming online now.
So we have a question, and you just said it's easy to get a card, and one of our webinar guests here asked if it's hard to get a medical license in New Jersey. So what does that mean, that it's easy? How easy is easy?
To get a medical card as a patient, it's pretty simple now. You can actually use a number of services online that'll connect you to a doctor that's authorized to issue a card. and you can tell them about your ailments. Since 2018, the number of ailments that would qualify you for a card have expanded immensely. Things like anxiety and chronic pain are now there when they weren't before. So, I'm trying to think of a couple quick med cards. I know there's a VeriHeal, some of the bigger providers that you can just use online and set up an appointment pretty easily.
Jordan, do you have something to say about that?
I think part of making it easy was when they added certain elements to the list. And that would be like chronic pain and anxiety. Before those were not, you actually, back in 2011 when it first started, you had to have a terminal illness in order to qualify to get your medical card. And obviously that's going to really limit the amount of people that can qualify. And since then they've been opening up, and now you don't have to have terminal, and now you can have chronic disease like chronic pain, anxiety. There's a list of other things as well.
Well, that's great. There's going to be more access, more medical marijuana dispensaries, correct?
Yes.
Just
Yes.
more. So that's great. And I think that shows a trend too with where the people are in New Jersey, and that it's ready for this opening up into recreational marijuana.
Yeah. You know what? And going back to those stats, I did want to touch again on that 89% conditional. It's high. I think it was a little unsure to me where it was going to end up. People knew that the application date for cultivation and manufacturing was coming back in December, right? December 15th is when that opened.
Mm-hmm.
And we all knew about that. I think it was maybe October or so when they announced the dates. Maybe it was November they announced the dates. But the regulations came out in August. And I think the folks that were kind of planning to get in had been taking steps even before all that came out. So to see 89% conditional, it was surprising to me. I was kind of hoping for more annual license applicants just to see, that others were really kind of taking those steps to get prepared. But it also speaks to how difficult it is to get to that next step, because the conditional license and the annual license, they require really different things.
Yes.
You need to have your location locked in for the annual license. You need to have a bank account. So it's just your standard operating procedures. You need to have all of them, which is a lot of paperwork. So it just kind of shows, like, to get to that next level, there is a big step to take.
Yeah, so that's why CHT is in existence, to make all of that easier. And
Exactly.
I'm not trying to keep plugging it, but I'm excited for when we launch and we can actually start helping people through this ridiculous, grueling process that is just too much for any one person without a whole team of lawyers to do on their own.
Sure.
But we're going to give everyone who does want to do that, on your own, as much information as we can. But you don't have to do it on your own, which is great. Okay, so let's move on to consideration of the 2018 RFA final agency decisions. I'm kind of a newbie, I'm very much a newbie into all of this inside industry stuff. So explain to me, what is an RFA final agency decision and why do I care about it? Yeah.
So this was going back years, right? This is a request for applications, which means it was the state, or at the time, the Health Commission, telling everyone, we want more applicants in the cannabis industry. This, of course, all came as a result of Phil Murphy's election, and he expanded the medical industry quite significantly, similar to getting the license, getting your medical card. He also expanded the amount of operators in the state. And a number of those operators applied and were successful, and they're operational today, like Verano and Green Thumb Industries, who runs Rise. But there were a few applicants who weren't selected. They appealed that decision, and it kind of got dragged out through the courts, telling the Department of Health, you have to kind of go back and review. And basically, years later, kind of long story short, the commission, who now has the authority from the Department of Health to look at this, now that we have the commission, basically said, we felt our review was appropriate, we did everything right, and so we were going to deny, the appeal and move on from this. And it's a long time coming. I'm not terribly shocked from the decision, just based on the amount of litigation that was involved and kind of the discretion that agencies like the commission or the Department of Health tend to have. Mm-hmm. So it's unfortunate for these applicants. I'm sure they spent a ton of money a ton of time. I know some of them did say in the meeting that they'll want to sue. Hopefully that doesn't hold up everything else again, but we'll see.
Well, I would want to sue too if I put all that money, time, and energy. I can only imagine. Jordan, what does this mean? Like, why is this significant? Why do people care about this decision and these particular applicants?
I think this is just a typical new industry problem. And it could happen in any state that has a new industry, because almost in every market, it starts in the Department of Health. And it's not super defined at the beginning what this is going to look like. Then in the middle of all these processes, they switch agencies and they create a new department. And I wouldn't say things fall through the cracks, but they do. And I feel like these applicants definitely got the short end of the stick. And I mean, it happens almost in every single state when the departments switch. So, I mean, I guess prepare for it, or at least know, or if you are worried about that happening to you, wait until they come up with an official agency for cannabis in that state. I don't really.
That seems like really key, because at some point they realize, oh, this is way too hard to regulate through this other department, and create their own department. And sounds like these guys just kind of got lost in the shuffle, and that's a shame. So maybe they will sue, and hopefully it won't hold anything up. But I would understand if they did.
Yeah. And I think one other impact I think we'll see from this, the medical industry application process in New Jersey is so different than what the commission intends for the adult use application process, where it's very open, rolling applications. It's not necessarily competitive. It would have been nice if I don't even know if the commission has this authority, but if they could have just said, look, you applied in 2018, we need product in the market. If you look satisfactory enough, give them the license, let them grow, let them do their thing. I mean, I looked at some of the names on there, and I think there were a couple that looked like multi-state operators, if I remember correctly. You have to assume they'd have the chops to do it, and they just didn't win the license. Maybe they'll go into adult use, right? But they're going to miss out on the medical market, which is what they wanted initially.
Okay, well, it's kind of one of those things where, because it's such an emerging business and such an emerging market, that things are changing so fast and things are constantly shifting and laws are constantly being updated. That's one great thing about CHT, is if you follow us on our social media, we will keep you up to date. And also, when we do our accelerator program, we have checklists that you can check every box and make sure. And you also get to see your score before you send in your application. I said I wasn't going to do any more of that, but I think I'm going to do that. So I hear these stories, these people, how much money did they put? How much time did they put? And if they had some, I don't know that if it would have helped them or not, but I can't imagine that it wouldn't have.
Hey, you look at the scores that came out and you're talking a point and a half of difference, so every little bit matters.
It's just like the Olympics when the guy won by the hair of his chinny chin chin, right? It's the same thing. CHT will help you win by the hair of your chinny chin chin. Okay, I'm done. Moving on to the next one. All right. So this next thing, this is a juicy topic here, super juicy for everybody out there. I'm sure you're excited to hear about approval of a statewide inventory tracking system. So this is something that is called seed to sale tracking. And if you're not familiar with it, you're probably very new into the industry. And let's first just start talking about it. What is seed to sale? Why do we care about it? Jordan, why don't you say a little bit about that?
All right. So seed to sale tracking has been required this entire time. That people that are operating in the industry know what that sounds like, right? Mm-hmm. So why now are we hearing that there's a final approval on a program for seed to sale tracking? I think that can be kind of confusing. So there's two layers to seed to sale tracking. The first layer is going to be on the operator, and that's what's been required this whole time. Is as a business, you're required to have a point of sale or an ERP system that is tracking all of the activity from grow to sale of the cannabis products that are being produced.
Pretty good deal. Like if you're in the industry, you got to know how to do this, and it's it's done. Like you can't.
Yeah, it's typically in the form of a point of sale. That's like the easiest way to put it. You're inputting your inventory and you're selling it. It's tracking that, right?
Nothing gets to like sort of fall out the door in the back or anything. It all has to go.
You're growing it and you're selling it. It's all being tracked in a very simple in-house system.
Okay.
Now the second layer of seed to sale is going to be on the regulatory end, and that's how they're going to cross-check and hold people accountable to their seed to sale inventory. So you don't have to change anything. You still have to have your point of sale, your in-house ERP system that tracks your inventory. It's gonna, if you have a system that's advanced, and any of the well-known point of sale systems out there can do this, they'll automatically integrate into this state system.
Okay, that's good.
So it's not as big of a burden as people think. Most people like fall out of their chair. Oh my God, we have to do this whole new system. But as long as you're using a sophisticated in-house system, it's really not going to be that big of a headache. So for the regulators, how do they use it? They're going to use it probably it's going to red flag. Let's say you have discrepancies in your inventory. It's going to red flag you. They're going to come and investigate or inspect. Or let's say you're doing an annual inspection and they do an inventory check. They're going to have a database to compare those numbers with. Like you're supposed to have 200 grams of concentrate on the shelf, and the system says you're supposed to have 200, but you only have 100. You're gonna have to answer that question, right? So it's gonna hold people accountable to their inventory, to their sales, taxes, all that stuff. So I think
every single tiny bit.
Yeah, and I think it's great. It's essential to a regulated market that's going to operate successfully.
And now that that's approved, what are the next steps? And we should probably do an entire session. Oh, did we lose Jordan?
Oh.
Okay, she'll pop back in. She'll pop back in a second. Hi, Max. Do you know much about Metric, Max?
I mean, I can talk about it, how it impacts us. I mean, look,
Yeah,
this was a big decision because it allows us to now go out and choose which point of sale provider we want to use, and that's important because that alone informs a lot of how our standard operating procedures are going to shake out. Mm-hmm. So we need to know which point of sale we're going to use. That'll help us write our standard operating procedures, and of course that'll help us apply. So we kind of had a feeling it was going to be Metric, but to get the confirmation is great. And now we can kind of go forth, make our selection, and continue on drafting.
This is just another piece in the puzzle for people who are getting ready to apply.
That's exactly right.
That's great. Yeah, so we could do an entire episode on Metric. That sounds almost as fun as terpenes. No, I'm kidding. I think terpenes are going to be way more fun because you guys have talked about it. And I'll take one tiny little break here to have Max tell us a little bit about Blue Violets. We didn't get to talk too much about your brand before and about terpenes, and it would be a great time to just kind of tell us a little bit about that.
Oh yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. So like I mentioned at the beginning, we are going for a dispensary application, micro business. So we'll be one of these famed micro licenses if we're successful. Minority woman owned. My wife is a registered nurse, and she and I are doing this entirely on our own. We kind of just combining our skills, our savings, the funds we have saved up to be successful in this industry. And we're going at this in a bit of a unique way. We are not just looking to open a dispensary and just sell cannabis like you might be used to. We have a unique focus on terpenes. And terpenes, for those of you who don't know, are the essential oils that are found in cannabis, and they're responsible for the unique smell and aroma of each strain. So like cannabinoids, THC, CBD, CBN, that are found in cannabis and are responsible mostly for the effects, terpenes play a role in, obviously that flavor. There's biological benefits, and also there is some research that shows terpenes are also partially responsible for the effects of each strain. So what we're looking to do is just get more of that data by partnering with local laboratories to test our products more frequently and bring that data to our customers in a really easy, color-coded, easily understandable way on our menu. So that when you come in, you'll know which products have which terpenes, and you can make the best decision for you based on that more accurate data.
Well, that's exciting. I'm so glad that I know that because when I brought up terpenes, I realized we have to discuss blue violets. So we're going to do a whole section on terpenes in one of our upcoming webinars, and we can kind of do a little bit deeper dive. There's some questions that I've missed. I'm so sorry. I was looking in the wrong place. So let's see. How does metric compare with other S2S systems? Who would like to take that?
I believe I can answer to that. There's really only one other competitor to metric right now, I would say, and that's BioTrack THC. They're both extremely similar. There is a couple features that I prefer in metric over BioTrack. BioTrack is a extremely simple yet sophisticated system. And the state will require some features that you have to use in there. But what Metric will do is they give you the entire access to the entire platform. So internally, you can use it as a full-on ERP system, even though all those features aren't required. You can utilize it. So you're paying for it because you have to utilize it for the state. But you also get a bunch of benefits on the back end of it if you choose to use it that way. BioTrack THC, very sophisticated system as well. For me, in my experience using it in the stores and at the grow, the more data-driven system is not as user-friendly for this industry's, like the people that are actually using it day to day. So I think Metric maybe makes it a little easier for the user, and therefore they're more inclined to use it more frequently, and it becomes more accurate, and I feel like it's just better that way. Max, have you tried any of the state seed to sale tracking systems?
No, this is one of the areas where I'm like coming at it completely unfamiliar. The only experience I have dealing with them is as a consumer, right? Which is limited. So it's going to be a novel experience for my wife and I.
Well, sounds like it's chosen for you, right? Metric is
exactly
it. So we can do an entire webinar on that as well. It sounds like that's going to be in high demand since it is the chosen system for New Jersey. We have another question here. New Jersey has a huge gray gifting market. How are the Class 6 distributor licenses going to compete against that? Who would like to answer that one?
I have some thoughts. Yeah, I'll share some thoughts.
I
mean, I think my philosophy is that eventually, like, if New Jersey does actually kind of nail this and allows this to be a competitive industry, over time, I do think most folks will want to participate with, the licensed, dispensaries, growers, deliveries, you name it. But it's just going to take time. I think as more, I don't know how to say it, people who are mostly unfamiliar with cannabis start getting interested in the product, start interacting with the product. Eventually, you'll see, I think, just more established businesses come up, and there'll just be a natural consensus. I don't know if the gray market's ever going to go away entirely, but I do think eventually the license holders will overtake them. It's just going to take time.
Jordan, do you have anything to add to that?
I agree. I think it's time. No, I'm not too familiar with that. I'm still getting in tune with the New Jersey market now. I haven't been in New Jersey in a long time, so I'm definitely curious.
Great. Is there anything else on this whole section of the CRC meeting, guys, that we need to hit on metric?
No, I think I think the initial response on metric is like, what's next, and I think the best thing for people to do is just pay attention to the Metric website, or they'll probably send out a newsletter from the state of when you can access the site on Metric. At this point, they're not even partners officially on the website, but when they do, go to metric.com and go to the partnerships and select New Jersey, and it will give you all the updates, timelines, implementation, guidance, all that instruction will be on there as soon as it's official.
Awesome. Let's see here. So there were other agenda topics that were discussed. There was a request to stay, ownership transfer, and a COVID-19 authority waiver, which were all approved by the commission. And was there anything in the public comments worth noting in this meeting that will likely be addressed soon? Jordan, do you have an answer?
In the public comments, yes. So one reoccurring topic in the public comments was that the commission just before the holidays made a decision not to allow medical dispensaries to accept tips. There is a lot of upset bartenders around this. I think that the timing was not very strategic on the commission's end because money is a sensitive subject around this time of year. So a lot of people came forward and expressed their opinions about how that was not right. And it's not right to allow one part of this market to accept tips, the non-medical, the adult and recreational use, but the medical cannot accept tips. I think it's clear there's a difference between the medical industry, a pharmacist, because that's what they lumped medical marijuana into in this theory, and a bud tender. Pharmacists go through tons of education, credentialing, right? All of these things that get them to a higher pay wage. They're not even on the same level as far as when it comes to the workforce. And so for a bud tender, it's really the tips they depend on to compensate for that living wage. They're typically, just over minimum wage workers, and they are offering a service just as any server or, a sommelier or somebody that's selling somebody wine or a specialty product that can accept tips. So I hope that the commission considers all their comments. I do agree with a lot of them. And I think that it will be important moving forward. I know that there's a lot of unions that were affected by this because in their contracts with their employees, tips is in that. And now there's all these union contracts that are jeopardized, I guess you could say. Max may be able to speak more on that. I'm not super familiar with unions in this industry. But that was one public comment that came up that seemed very popular. Max, do you have any insight on the tipping of bud tenders?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why the commission came out on this way. Maybe there's a good legal footing for it, but I also just think it's like, why take that opportunity away from people who are just, performing a service? Just personally speaking, right? Not necessarily from a legal or regulatory perspective. Like, I think they should just be able to get tips if they want to ask for them. At the same time, I think probably, and I've been looking for this data, I've been trying to understand what the current medical dispensaries are actually paying their employees here in the state, and I've not really been able to get a clear answer because it's probably not enough. So maybe they should be paying them more.
That's usually the case.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yes, and that's coming up here in the comments too, that you're not paying bud tenders a living wage, like,
Yeah.
What to expect.
It's hard.
And
yeah.
I wonder too, when New Jersey opens up recreational marijuana for adult use, how is that going to affect the medical industry? And if, are you going to have different users going to each one, or do you think they're all the same users?
I would expect there might be some difference. I look at Massachusetts, where I know dispensaries can have a line for medical and recreational. I mean, one of the benefits of that is you just get in quicker with your medical license. And I do believe they've removed tax on medical purchases. I think Jersey was thinking about doing that, or we are doing that. So there is definitely a benefit to, and of course, obviously, if you want to be able to even consume in public here in Jersey without really any concern. I mean, I know it's decriminalized now, but still, I think you still need your medical ID to actually consume on a street. I don't think you can actually legally consume on the street with marijuana without risk of at least having something happen to you. I know cops aren't supposed to approach anymore, but so there are, I think, a few benefits to keeping your card. And whether or not there's going to be different product availability, we'll see. I know concentrates, everyone talks about concentrates. I'd be surprised if we made that distinction, right? Concentrates only for medical and not for rec. But you never know.
Yeah, those are typically the three differences in medical and rec. You're going to have higher dose edibles in medical, lower dose in rec. the price difference is going to be significant. And then the tax rates are typically different, medical versus rec.
And that might be a great topic for another webinar too, is to really kind of break down the differences between the two and kind of help people navigate that from the business side.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Jordan.
I was going to tie it back to the labor part. Right now, to be a bud tender is not very competitive. There's very limited jobs to be a bud tender right now. So companies don't have to pay that much, right? Everyone wants to be a bud tender. As more companies come on and the more that they allow, it will be more competitive, and you will start to see an increase in those wages, and it won't be down at the baseline. It'll be much more competitive. So
well, that's good news. And that kind of ties into a question that we had jump up here from John. Max, how many jobs do you believe you'd be creating when you open your dispensary? He says he's curious to get an idea of how many jobs will become available aside from business owners.
Yeah, so as a micro business, we're limited to 10 employees, and that includes my wife and I. So we'll be able to hire 8 actual full-time employees, but I do think our impact goes beyond just what we're going to have in our store. I mean, we are without a doubt using professional services locally. We'll be using delivery services when they come online. And I can see us even partnering in other ways too. I mean, I've thought about, because the location that we're negotiating is very close to a college. I thought about internship opportunities. Does that play into the staff number?
Mm-hmm.
I'm still exploring that.
Mm-hmm.
So unfortunately, 8 full-time employees is what we'll bring on. But I do think the impact is more than just that.
That's great. So having that capped, do you feel like that is a positive thing for your business or a negative thing? Like, what is the purpose of that cap?
Yeah, I mean, we're in a small space, so I don't know that we'll need more than that. And I don't even know if we could fit, but we'll see how it goes. I mean, there's a chance that the volume is very high and, we might need more hands. There's always a chance for us to kind of grow out of the micro business license and get rid of that cap.
Okay, so if you were to get so busy that you had to go above that, you would have to apply for another license.
That's right. I think we'd have to do that in 2 years.
Woo-hoo.
So yeah, exactly. I think the difference between what we are getting with the micro business and what we'd get without it is not so significant. I know one of the things is like a labor agreement with a union, and there's a couple of other restrictions that I can't remember off the top of my head, but it wouldn't be so much more. So yeah.
Okay. Well, that's really interesting and good to know. We have another question here, Max and Jordan. It's for both of you. Are you concerned at all that micro business licenses aren't capped? Thoughts of Oklahoma come to mind. And Jordan and I were just kind of discussing actually before this webinar about how different it is in Oklahoma because anybody can get a license. It's kind of the opposite of how it has been in Illinois and appears to be in New Jersey. So what can you talk about that?
So I do have a pretty strong opinion about this. I am not a huge fan of capping licenses, but that is the case here. And like I had mentioned before, it sounds like because we're capping them, the state is also using data. They're data driven. So I'm confident that next year, when they do an analysis in the industry, just like they did for medical, that they're going to allow more every year as needed. Now, if they weren't taking this data-based approach, like some other states that I've been involved in, where they just pick a number where it feels like out of thin air based off of other states' data, I would be concerned. But because of the way that they handled the medical, I am confident that we're going to be fine until the market opens up completely. What do you think, Max?
I think, definitely the cap on the non-micro licenses definitely rubbed me the wrong way. And also the number that they came to. I don't even know I don't know if they've even announced why they came to 37.
They did actually in the meeting.
Did they?
Yeah, that's why I wanted the recording. But when we get the recording, we'll be able to share that.
I'll go back to that one. But for the micro licenses, so there's no cap there. And I'm not sure it concerns me just yet. I think I want to see who's getting licensed first, because I think you'll be able to tell after we see this first kind of round of micro licenses come out, like what's acceptable and what's not, because the the regulations were pretty flexible, especially around things like security. They were risk-based, which means the commission basically said, you have to have appropriate security for your business. If you're a small business, you'll need less security. If you're a big business, you'll need more. And they didn't really give a whole lot more guidance than that. So they said they lowered the barriers, right? And they did, I think. But where exactly did they lower them to? I don't quite know yet. And so if we start seeing, let's say, micro growers with very loose, just kind of objectively security standards, you might assume like, okay, it might be kind of easy to get one of these licenses, because that's where a lot of the cost, I think, is, on things like security and of course just preparing the paperwork to submit it. But we'll see. I think there is almost like this implied cap by having some standards.
Yes.
And if they kind of, increase their expectations, then we're not going to see a license on every corner, I don't think.
Right. And that's the difference in Oklahoma. In Oklahoma, it's a free-for-all. There's no licensing categories. You could sign up and find somebody that's lived there for 2 years and open a monstrosity grow. It's absurd. And that's how you have an issue. But with the regulations and the tightness of the rules, that will limit it itself. And I'm a huge fan of that model.
I think Oklahoma has, the last time I checked, they had 2,200 dispensaries, which is nuts.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a lot.
So look, there's a lot of hoping going on here that it's going to be, it seems to me they're taking a more moderate approach, and something is not capped, some things are. So it looks like there's hope yet for New Jersey that it will be fair and equitable and hopefully not a flooded market. Well, before we answer any more questions, because we're getting towards the end here, we're about to wrap up. Let's start to close with our industry tip. So every webinar, we're going to have a potent industry tip, something that's short and sweet and that really packs a lot of punch. And today, Miss Jordan Smith has that. Jordan, can you enlighten us with your potent?
Well, I just love the CRC meeting so much. It's just the CRC meetings are official business for the commission to tackle license matters, approvals, changes, discuss industry status, approve new rules, all the exciting things that I love. But there is a public comment section, and it's important for people to know that and utilize the public comment section. I think a good example of that is when we began this and talked about the social equity funding. I mean, we just made 2 examples of 2 great states doing it really well and effective. I think funding your social equity applicants is essential in the success of that program. And I think I think that would be a great platform for somebody to speak up. And that's just one example of a place where you could speak up and let the commission know that that's something that people are interested in hearing more about and would like to see happen in their state. Another part is the meetings is that they don't actually happen every month. So if you're an applicant and you are, let's see, what's a good example? If you're looking to submit, you would submit your application like 30 days before the meeting date or whatever the required time frame is. I'm not exactly sure what that is. But for example, you submit your application 30 days before when you want to be approved. You have all your stuff done. You're ready to operate once you're approved. Everybody's excited, but then you submit in March and find out that in April there's not a meeting and you're dead in the water for an extra 30 days. So that's just one example of what these meetings are important for. And as a business owner and applicant, I think it's important to make note that in April, August, and November of this year, there are no meetings. So plan accordingly if you're looking to do any application changes or get an approval. I guess that's probably my best tip for the CRC meetings today. I do want to do a webinar about public comments or the CRC meetings in general, just to get people confident in participating in those meetings. We can all be our own activist, and they do give you a platform for that.
So the tip is find out when the CRC meetings are, plan your application accordingly. If you can, go there and speak up.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. I think that's a great tip, and really, really important for everyone who is about to apply in New Jersey. And our cannabis closer, we're going to have Max Thompson give us a mindset tip. Since you have been through this, you've been going through this process for 18 months, you're 90% finished. What can you give to the people out there that are about to start this, a mindset tip to help them get through this process?
Yeah, for sure. Biggest piece of advice is just to take it one step at a time. It is really a lot that the state is asking for, and it's totally achievable, but it's a lot. So just break it down. Marathon, not a sprint. Take each piece one day at a time, and you'll find it takes a little while, but after a while, you will have achieved a lot. And don't be afraid to ask for help. Look out where you can. Go online, go on Reddit, but really take it one piece at a time because it is a lot of work. But if you break it down to small pieces, you'll get it.
Small pieces, and ask for help. So luckily we have help for you. It's called CHT. Thanks for joining us today. This has been our first live Q&A with this awesome team. We haven't gotten time to get to any more questions today, but we're going to be doing another webinar on January 27th at 6 p.m. And we will invite everybody through email. Want to let you guys know that you can replay this webinar by logging into your Livestorm account. And we'll also be broadcasting another webinar January 27th. We'll send you an email invite so you can register for that one. And CHT is launching our cannabis education bundle in February and the application bundle on March 1st. So you want to make sure and like us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter by searching Cognitive Harmony Technologies and hitting the follow button. Got to make sure you do that. Hit the follow button. We'll be posting news, updates, cannabis tips, and promoting our software launch coming this spring. Follow us so you won't miss out on those dates. Again, CHT is a company that was created by applicants for applicants. So it is created by people who have been through the process just like you. They know the ins and outs of it, and it is designed specifically for all of the problems that you're going to come up against. So thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Max, so much. Does anyone have a last word?
See you guys soon.
No.
Thanks for joining.
Enjoy, and we will see you guys next time. Thanks so much.
Yes. Have a good night.
How do you end it?
There we go. Goodbye, everyone.